The old brick church stood at the corner of Maple and 3rd, its white steeple reaching toward a gray November sky. Pastor James Miller adjusted his reading glasses as he reviewed Sunday's sermon notes in his small office. The afternoon sun filtered through stained glass windows, casting colored light across worn wooden pews. Marcus Webb sat in the back row, eyes closed, not in prayer but in meditation, a habit formed over 15 years of military service. At 42, he carried himself with quiet dignity, his close-cropped hair showing threads of gray. The suit he wore for his nephew's baptism rehearsal concealed the lean, hardened frame of a man who'd spent decades in the world's most dangerous places, was Delta Force. Or had been, until 3 months ago when he'd retired and come home to the small Georgia town where he'd grown up. Army Rangers had been just the beginning. He'd gone further, deeper into the special operations world than most people knew existed. The church was filling up with family. His sister Michelle fussed over little Andre, adjusting the toddler's tiny suit. Cousins, aunts, uncles, people Marcus hadn't seen in years filled the pews with warm chatter and laughter. Outside, 3 pickup trucks rolled slowly down 3rd Street, their engines rumbling like distant thunder. The trucks parked across the street. 12 men emerged, their bodies covered in tattoos that told a story of prison time and racial hatred. Jake Thornton, their leader, was a mountain of a man with a shaved head and cold blue eyes that held nothing but contempt. "Remember," Jake said, checking the pistol tucked in his waistband, "we're making a statement. These people need to know they're not welcome here anymore. Not since we took over this neighborhood. They'd been terrorizing the community for months, vandalism, threats, assaults. The police seemed slow to respond, and the small black congregation had grown afraid. But today was different. Today they would do more than spray paint and broken windows." The gang members pulled on ski masks and moved toward the church, carrying bats, chains, and concealed weapons. Hatred had made them bold. Ignorance had made them foolish. Inside the church, Marcus's eyes opened. He'd heard the trucks, recognized the particular quality of their silence after the engines cut. Old instincts whispered warnings in a language he'd never forgotten. The church doors burst open with a crash that echoed through the sanctuary. 12 masked men poured in, their leader brandishing a pistol. "Everybody stay where you are," Jake shouted. "You're gonna learn what happens when you don't listen." Screams erupted. Michelle grabbed Andre, pulling him close. Pastor Miller stepped forward, hands raised in peace. "Please," the pastor said, "there are children here." "Whatever your grievance," Jake struck him across the face with the gun barrel. The elderly pastor crumpled to the floor, blood streaming from his temple. Marcus didn't move. Not yet. He counted them, 12, 3 with visible firearms, rest with bludgeons. He noted their positions, their body language, who seemed nervous, who seemed eager. His mind ran calculations that had kept him alive in Fallujah, Kandahar, Mogadishu, and places that didn't have names on maps. "This is our town now," Jake continued, waving the gun at the terrified congregation. "You people need to pack up," and he didn't finish the sentence. Marcus moved, not rushed, not panicked, but with the fluid economy of motion that separated professionals from amateurs. He closed the 15 feet between himself and the nearest gunman in 2 seconds. The man with the shotgun never saw him coming. Marcus's hand clamped on the weapon, controlling its direction, while his elbow drove into the man's throat. A sharp twist disarmed him. The shotgun was now Marcus's. Everything changed. "Gun," someone shouted, but Marcus was already moving. He dropped the shotgun. In this confined space, with family present, long guns were liabilities. Better to control them with his hands. The second armed man turned, reaching for his pistol. Marcus closed distance, his hand intercepting the draw. A precise strike to the radial nerve paralyzed the man's arm. Another strike collapsed his knee. The pistol clattered to the floor, and Marcus kicked it under the pews. 8 seconds had passed. Jake spun toward the commotion, bringing his pistol around. Marcus was already inside his arc, one hand controlling the weapon, directing it toward the ceiling. His other hand struck Jake's elbow joint. The gun discharged harmlessly into the roof, then fell. "Down. Everyone down," Marcus commanded his family. They knew that voice, the one that carried absolute authority, the one that meant don't question, just obey. The congregation dropped, the remaining gang members rushed him. A mistake. In close quarters, numbers could be a disadvantage if you didn't know how to use them. And these men didn't. Marcus had fought insurgents in Ramadi who'd trained their whole lives for war. He'd gone hand to hand with enemy soldiers who were just as trained, just as motivated. These racist thugs with their prison yard intimidation tactics were children by comparison. He used their momentum against them, redirected their attacks into each other. A man swung a bat, Marcus sidestepped, and the bat connected with his friend's ribs instead. Another charged, Marcus's foot swept his legs, sending him crashing into 2 others. They tried to surround him, but Marcus never stopped moving. He flowed through them like water, each strike precise and devastating. Knee strikes, elbow strikes, palm strikes to vulnerable points techniques refined through thousands of hours of training and real-world application. The chain whipped toward his head. Marcus ducked under it, caught the man's extended arm, and used a joint lock that sent him screaming to the ground. Another tried to grab him from behind. Marcus dropped his weight, threw him over his hip, and the man crashed through a pew. Jake scrambled for his fallen pistol, fingers stretching toward it. Marcus's foot pinned his hand to the floor. "Don't," Marcus said quietly. Jake looked up into eyes that had seen things he couldn't imagine: real combat, real war, real consequences. Whatever bravado had brought him here evaporated. "You came here to hurt my family," Marcus said, his voice level and cold. "To terrorize people in their place of worship. Because of how they look. Because of hatred." He pressed down slightly. Jake cried out. "You picked the wrong church. The wrong day." Around them, the gang members who could still move were backing toward the doors. Some were unconscious. Others clutched broken bones or dislocated joints. The entire engagement had lasted less than 90 seconds. Marcus's nephew Andre peeked out from his mother's protective embrace, eyes wide. "Uncle Marcus is really strong," the 3-year-old whispered. Marcus released Jake and picked up the pistols, expertly dropping their magazines and clearing the chambers. "Call the police," he told Pastor Miller, who was being helped up by congregation members. "Tell them we have 12 men here who need arresting." Police arrived 6 minutes later, faster than usual, perhaps because this time the dispatcher had reported armed intruders. They found 12 men in various states of distress, none of them seriously injured but all of them subdued. Sheriff Tom Hawkins surveyed the scene, recognizing the tactical efficiency of what had occurred. He'd been a Marine, and he recognized the work of someone with serious training. "Mr. Webb," the sheriff said. "You want to tell me what happened here?" Marcus gave a precise, factual account. Security cameras had captured everything. The congregation provided statements. The evidence was overwhelming. "These men," Sheriff Hawkins said, "they've been causing trouble for months. We've been building a case, but they've been careful. Until today. They made a mistake," Marcus said simply. "That they did." The sheriff looked at him curiously. "What did you do in the service, if you don't mind me asking?" "Army. Various assignments." The sheriff, a veteran himself, recognized a non-answer. "Well, your various assignments just saved lives today." As the gang members were loaded into police cars, Jake looked back at the church, at the quiet man in the suit who'd dismantled their entire operation in under 2 minutes. He'd find out later, from his court-appointed lawyer, exactly who Marcus Webb was, or had been. That knowledge would haunt him through his prison sentence. The baptism was rescheduled for the following Sunday. Andre was blissfully unaware of the danger that had passed, focused instead on the special cake his grandmother had promised. Marcus sat in his usual pew in the back, watching his family celebrate. His sister approached, Andre balanced on her hip. "Thank you," Michelle said softly. "I never really understood what you did over there. All those years." "I thought I did, but it's over now," Marcus said. "I'm home." "Are you?" She searched his eyes. "Really home?" Marcus looked around the church, at the bullet hole in the ceiling that would need patching, at the broken pew, at the pastor's bandaged forehead. At his family, safe and whole. "Yeah," he said. "I really am." Pastor Miller approached, moving slowly but with determination. "Marcus, I've been thinking. This church needs better security. Would you consider helping us set something up? Training some volunteers in basic safety procedures?" Marcus considered. He'd spent 15 years protecting people in war zones. Maybe it was time to protect people at home. "I can do that," he said. The incident made regional news. The gang's reign of terror ended that afternoon, most members facing serious charges, their leader looking at 20 years for armed assault, terroristic threats, and hate crimes. The small church became a symbol of something larger, of standing up to hatred, of community resilience. But Marcus avoided the attention, uncomfortable with being called a hero. "I just did what needed doing," he told a local reporter who tracked him down, but to the congregation, he was exactly that, a guardian who'd appeared when needed most. 3 months later, Marcus taught his first security workshop at the church. 20 volunteers showed up, eager to learn. Not to be vigilantes, but to protect their community the right way, with awareness, preparation, and unity. "Security isn't about violence," Marcus told them. "It's about being prepared so violence doesn't happen. It's about watching out for each other. Being aware. And knowing that hatred only has power if good people do nothing." Andre, now attending services every Sunday with his mother, would grow up in that church. Years later, he'd remember the story how his uncle Marcus had protected them, how one man's training and courage had made a difference, but he'd also remember the lesson Marcus taught him personally: strength isn't just about what you can do to others. It's about what you're willing to do for others. The church still stands at the corner of Maple and 3rd, its steeple reaching skyward. Inside, families worship in peace, their sanctuary protected not just by locks and cameras, but by a community that learned to stand together. And in the back pew, when he's in town, sits a quiet man in a suit, retired now, truly home, but always watching, always ready, because some habits you never break, and some lines you never let anyone cross.